Welcome into the Nashville Soccer Show for the first time since 2020. Nashville SC has lost 2 games in a row. Another defeat to Real Salt Lake over the weekend. Lots to get into with USA-Mexico coming up tomorrow on Wednesday. The last USA-Mexico game in Azteca in World Cup qualifying until at least 2030. Don't know how I feel about that. Plus, the F1 season is a wonderful soap opera, and if you were here for the F1 minute, you're going to get at least a couple of minutes at the end of today's show. Will Bowling, Davey Shepard, Lucas Panzica with you as always. Gentlemen, it is great to see you. Even it's great to see your smiling faces, even though Nashville SC going into the international break is not smiling about much of anything.
Yeah, pretty timely break for Nashville SC, I would say, and we'll get into this here soon, but I have questions about this team right now. I think in a lot of ways, they're the inverse of the team that we've come to know over the last 2 years at MLS. So I think the break is very needed, and who knows, that could just be enough. Just a little bit of a different perspective, get some guys out, do some different things. We'll see.
In a weird way, they're the inverse of the team that we've come to know at their best, but at the same time, their biggest weaknesses that we've come to know were on full display last weekend, and some of their biggest strengths were also on full display, just without the end product. So a lot to get into here. I think maybe a look in the mirror might be required for this club at the moment. Just 4 matches in, maybe we'll try to do that for them.
We have got a little bit of everything here in this game. We've got a Walker Zimmerman power header. We've got set piece goals given up by Nashville SC. We've got second ball given up. But perhaps most importantly, I forgot to mention, we've got a red card and a referee moment at the end of this game. But perhaps most importantly, we have a moment for the Nashville Soccer Show to take a victory lap. Because, Davey, did I not tell you and our fine co-host Lucas Panzica last week that we would see Teal Bunbury start in place of CJ Sapong before we saw Ake Loba? Now, this is not that big of a leap that I was making last week, but I will take a larger than I should victory lap to begin today's show.
No, I think it's reasonable. You definitely said it.
Nothing. Okay, cool.
it bears out. Yeah, it's just one of those things where I don't know. I think fans didn't expect it, and the writing was just very on the wall. Now, I think the interesting thing is, what do we see moving forward? Because in my opinion, if this was basically almost any other player on the roster, I don't know that you'd ever see them play again in a Nashville shirt. I don't think that's hyperbole. If this is Hanwala Bwana, never. And again, that kind of same thing has happened to him. Lolly Pinheiro. Lolly Pinheiro's last minutes were 100,000% better than these minutes from Teal Bunbury. So just going off of the Gary we know, we probably shouldn't see the guy again. I don't think that's what's going to happen here, but I'll go into that whenever we're ready to.
Yeah. My thing on Bunbury is sort of connected to what we have with Ake Loba, and it kind of branches out here. And I know we're going to get into that, but the point is just at surface level with his performance, there were no positives, right? I mean, it was completely in the negative. Not only, conceding both goals where they were essentially right on top of him. Now you can talk about how Nashville could have communicated things better. You don't want Teal Bunbury to be the guy responsible for stopping Bobby Wood and a header on a corner kick. So maybe there are other issues that lead up to that, but at the end of the day, he was that guy. And as well as the second goal that was conceded, ultimately that lost them the game. And then in the attack as well. And you look at the 56th minute on basically a 2-on-1 with Mukhtar and Bunbury crashing in. The corridor is there, right? The ball is at Mukhtar's feet. Bunbury basically with a clear path to goal, no defenders in front of him. The corridor is there for a through ball to put him right on goal. Is Mukhtar too keen to score in that moment? Does he not trust Bunbury in that moment to outrun the recovering defender with the ball at his feet? I mean, a lot of things here to sort of pick apart, but almost completely in the negative for Teal Bunbury. Jonathan Slape said it this week. Nashville essentially played a man down. Which is crazy because their expected goal differential was the best it's ever been in MLS history, and that's with one of their strikers being essentially non-existent.
This was closer to what Nashville SC was at the beginning of its expansion days than it's ever been, which, I mean, makes sense because it's their first time with 2 consecutive losses since that 2020 season. So that's certainly not a positive when you talk about the performance that Teal Bunbury had up top. That guy had 32 touches, 1 shot, 2 goals conceded pretty much straight away in this game to Bobby Wood, the fastest goal that Nashville SC has conceded in Major League Soccer in this now year 3. We talk so much, guys, about how the attackers have to be defensive minded and have to know their way around the defensive play. And Davey makes a good point on this stuff that, like, that's a non-negotiable for Gary Smith. Like, if you are a striker or an attacker in the game and you have a mistake that leads to goal, like, you're working hard to do that. Like, that doesn't really happen where a striker has 1 mistake leading to a goal, much less 2 mistakes leading to a goal. But I mean, Lucas, this was kind of a very specific, like, there was no other doubt really to put here. And I don't want to really pick on the guy all that much, but I mean, let's be honest, like, we got to be accountable for everything that we do here on the field. And this just wasn't good for him as a net negative defensively for this team.
No, and look, I look at the first goal, and I'm not here to take any blame off of Teal Bunbury. It was a dreadful performance. Chris Ivey highlighted it very well in his 3 takeaways after this game. You do not need Teal Bunbury to be the guy contesting Bobby Wood defensively on a corner kick. It's just Bobby Wood, U.S. men's national team legend, is going to win that battle each and every time. And it comes back down to the set piece defending issues. And look, I know we'll get into this, but if I could just, by the way, set piece defending watch, 3 goals allowed, 4 games, penalties count, disclaimer every time. I won't count the second RSL goal as a set piece goal because Nashville did defend the initial ball in, had to get reorganized for the follow-up, but the second ball in was stationary for a moment before it got whipped in. It's a lot of the same issues that you do see in set piece defending, a routine ball in the box, in the words of Gary Smith after the game. And if Zimmerman and Miller both marking Bobby Wood, Teal Bunbury completely ball watching, and Schmidt has an open path at the back post to find the end of the cross. So on that second goal, it just seems like complete miscommunication. On the first goal, Bunbury essentially is the only guy on top of Bobby Wood in the box, and he's left stuck in those moments. So yeah, it's Teal Bunbury conceding both goals, but it's also just deeper issues of set piece defending with this team that we just continue to see come back. And you can't explain it, right? Like Walker Zimmerman's goal to equalize has me very confused as to why Nashville is so bad at conceding set piece goals, right? And I know that makes no sense because his goal has nothing to do with conceding set pieces, but he dominated Bobby Wood for that header to remind us that he's one of the best in the league aerially, offensively and defensively, and having that dominant of a force in the air commanding the middle of your back line should not lead to being one of the worst set piece defending teams in the country. It's mystifying. It reminds me of the Preds, right? In the power play for what felt like 3-4 years. Like, you couldn't pinpoint anything in particular. They brought in specialists to come in and try to figure it out. They couldn't do it. They had all the firepower in place. They had the right personnel to have success, a man up, but it was like they were literally worse with a man advantage. This is how I picture Nashville and set piece defending. So yes, Teal Bunbury certainly there and conceding both goals, but these are much, much deeper issues when it comes to Nashville's biggest weakness from 2021 carrying over to 2022. And I just can't pinpoint why that is. And that's concerning.
No, you're clearly spot on there, Lucas. And I said earlier, I thought that I think it's the inverse in a lot of ways, but with that, you're spot on. It's exactly the same problem we saw last year. And I'm not quite as low on this performance as I think the Nashville Soccer Twitterverse was. To be honest with you, I think if the team plays like that, they win most games. I mean, I don't know, maybe not win most games. I think they're taking a point most games, and then I think they're winning way more than they lose. So I
2.8 XG is going to win you a lot of games.
Exactly right. So I think it was a really good performance. I actually, despite his biblically bad finishing, I think it's the best Lovitz has looked this season.
Yeah, definitely.
Which isn't a high bar because he hasn't been nearly what you expect out of Lovitz over the last 2 seasons. Again, very similar to Dax's start last year, just not anywhere near where we expect him to be. And I think he would probably agree with that. But over the last 2 years, this team has shown me, and I think you guys would agree with this, that they find ways to win. They're a Swiss Army knife. They need to shift formation. They do it. They need to plug in a winger at midfield. They do whatever it takes. They figure out a way to get the result that is needed. And that has been the opposite of what we've seen this season. All they've shown me this season is they know different ways to lose games. 2 weeks ago, it was, in my opinion, the worst performance ever from a Gary Smith team in Nashville against Dallas. I think that team offered absolutely nothing going forward. Could have practically just not shown up. It was just as bad of a performance as we've seen. Not as bad of a result as we've seen, because you've needed bigger points at different places or whatever it might be. It's bad of a performance as you've seen. The other night was a fine performance. It's more than a fine performance. It was a really good performance. And they come away in a game where you'd say, hey, they should take all three here, and they don't even get one. And that's where I think I just have questions. And I tweeted it after the game. Nashville SC has issues. Someone tell me what this team does well. And I didn't really get the only answer I was expecting was I think they've been good in midfield, whether it's Hani Godoy-Davis or Dax before his meltdown the other day, which I think we're going to talk about. I think the midfield connection has been pretty good, with the exception of Hani being disconnected in Dallas. Other than that, I can't really name it. The defense isn't playing well. The wing backs aren't playing well. Joe Willis has been fine, I guess. And the forward situation, everything you need to know is that Teal Bunbury started the game the other day. So, which, again, not to hammer this guy, and I'm actually going to shift gears here a little bit. I think everybody has bad performances. I think everybody should be let out of the doghouse, come out and show themselves, whatever. I think all of that stuff. Teal Bunbury has never been a target forward, a number like a true number 9. Never in his career has he been that. He's definitely not that now. But the line you get from the coach is that he's got pools of players and he sees people fit certain molds. We're being told over and over and over again, Ake Loba doesn't fit that mold. Well, I'm here screaming from the mountaintops. Teal Bunbury does not fit that mold either. Yeah. So my question is this, is if neither of these guys fit the mold, why in the hell aren't you playing the guy who costs $7 million? Because we've made it clear that defense is not the priority. Again, if Bunbury comes back out in minutes before Loba now, I am ready to say it is a full stop bust. If after that the other day, where we saw 2 goals directly given up from Bunbury, if he continues to get meaningful minutes before Ake Loba, I'm off the I need to wait and see more. That tells me everything I need to know. Yeah.
I think a couple things there. I think what this team is still good at, and maybe this is not that big of a leap either, but they're still good at defending an open play.
Yeah.
I think is a fair statement to make at this point.
They've
made
conceded,
some bad mistakes. Yeah. The 2 goals conceded, the set pieces are one thing. In open play, they're still pretty organized.
That's fair.
I think the 2 players that have been most consistent so far for me, obviously Walker Zimmerman, the guy who gets man of the match every time Nashville doesn't win. And I don't blame Nashville, by the way, for that. It makes sense. He's very good. He's America's best center back right now. We're going to get into America later. Sean Davis is tremendous. Like, really, really good. He gained possession 11 times for Nashville in midfield, made 2 interceptions, a department where he led MLS a season ago for New York Red Bulls. You talk about guys fitting into pools of players. I think he fits in a couple of different groups of what Gary Smith can get out of his midfield players in a couple of different shifts. I mean, he played every minute for New York last year. Like, Nashville can go ahead and pencil him into the team sheet every time he's healthy. He had 2 blocks of this game. Only guy that blocked a shot for the entire team. He had both of them in this game against Salt Lake. Going back though to the Ake Loba part, I feel like we are just making an Ake Loba minute at this point, in addition to our F1 minute at the end of the.
Well, I think it needs to be around.
Show.
It needs to be around until some solution comes about, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think the guy he replaces, because I think Ake Loba was good in this game. It's the most we've seen him this year. He's on for 20 minutes. He had some good moments. I think he replaces Randall Leal before he replaces CJ Sapong in the next lineup. Randall Leal lost possession 20 times in this game. That was the most of anybody in a Nashville shirt. Just looked genuinely frustrated, not exactly himself. I think him coming off of international duty, it would be a good thing to cycle him out for a couple of games just to keep him rested, because that's one of the hardest working guys in your team. And you don't get the full experience of Randall Leal if you trot Randall Leal out there every single game, in my opinion. But Davey, I'll kind of open the floor to you to respond to all that and to kind of hit these points, because there's a lot to digest out of a performance that was okay. I mean, Nashville had 58% of the ball in this game.
Yeah, again, I'm high on the performance. I thought the performance was good. I agree with you. I think Davis has been great since he's come over, and I mentioned that in the midfield. I think one of the more consistent players. Walker, agreed. I mean, even if there's mistakes from the defense, he had the only goal, right? So you can't – the contribution you see from him is meaningful week after week after week. So I'm with you on all of that. I agree with you probably. And I think it doesn't really have anything to do with you. If Ake Loba gets in the lineup, it is not going to be at the expense of CJ Sapong.
Right.
I mean, if CJ needs a rest, that's one thing, which we saw the other day, I guess, was what that was. So yeah, if it's not going to be for CJ, which is what I believe, it probably will be for Randall. Because to me, the other night, Hani Mukhtar, I think as dangerous as he's looked to not come off with anything. Right. I think, well, I mean, he had the assist on the set piece. And then I think that ball Randall played into him. I think normally you see him score there. And then he played another ball in that was just outrageous. I think he looked super dangerous. I think his level, no one should be concerned with that. He's playing very, very well. I am concerned. And me and Lucas, I think we talk about this every week. There just is no like-for-like replacement for CJ Sapong. And Gary wants this team to play through a center forward. So a lot of these things we're talking about, Shaq Moore coming in maybe, more crosses, all this stuff, it's predicated upon having a guy up there who can get the ball, hold it, maybe score with his head, stuff like that. And that isn't Bunbury. It's not Loba. I mean, the manager tells us not Loba. The Daniel Rios trade makes less and less sense to me as this season plays out. I think no matter what you think of the guy's health, he was a reliable forward on the field and a target forward who kind of stayed in the box, knew as well, roll well. Again, I think Jandre Cadiz makes sense in this current team. Not at a DP salary. I get that. I'm just confused. The player who replaces CJ Sapong isn't on this team. It proved me wrong. He's just not there. So I think ideally, and it's again, something me and Lucas have said a few times, I think what you need is the person CJ Sapong goes in and replace. They need a DP target forward. I know that isn't some sexy thing right now in modern football, but that is what this team needs if it's going to play the way Gary Smith apparently wants them to play. But not on the roster right now. So I agree. If Loba gets in right now, I think it's over Leal. I think you're right.
But this is why I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, because I say this every time. It's what they needed last summer. That's what the entirety of last summer. This is what we talked about. And Teal Bunbury's performance in Utah is a big reason that we get so frustrated about this, because nothing to point to anymore. Right. We say, well, beforehand, we were saying, maybe back half of last season when it came to Loba, when we still thought maybe that's the role he would play. Well, it's because CJ Sapong is scoring. You can't mess up the dynamic with him and Hani Mukhtar. Okay, that's fine. I don't want to hear that it would require a change of shape to get him involved, because Loba would excel in more of a Hani Mukhtar role. This team didn't spend $7 million to get a lesser version of Hani Mukhtar. They didn't spend $7 million to get somebody that could spell Randall Leal or play that role. They did it for a goal-scoring striker that can play with Hani Mukhtar. And Ake Loba is not that. We have finally seen enough to know definitively he is not that. So what do you point to? Is there a disconnect here? I mean, if you have to manufacture ways and fundamentally change things and take out key parts of your lineup to get your $7 million man in, then there has to be a disconnect that's traced back somewhere, because we're having the same conversation we had last summer, and the $7 million man is playing absolutely no part in it.
Just real quick, other target forward who was in competition, Michael Estrada, 3 appearances, 2 goals, 147 minutes played right now. So
Rodrigo Pinheiro had a banger over the weekend too.
Yeah, he got a red card though, right? Or that was that last. I think it was the week before. He had a goal and a red card the next time up the field. So, hey, again. Look, I don't want this to come across as smash Teal Bunbury show, because I'm not blaming him entirely.
Not our style.
It's not our style. It's not what I like to do. But I'm just saying, if that same mindset that we've seen about offensive players over the last 2 years is applied to that guy, I don't know that you ever see him again. That's what Lally got. It's pretty close to what Hanwala got after a pretty bad offensive performance where he gave up a lot of balls. Now, I know there was some injury stuff there too, but and I just, it wouldn't shock me at all if that same, now I'm not sure that same logic is going to be applied, but it's what we've seen before. And again, 2 weeks ago, Loba tries a flick in the box and Gary gives comments post game.
Yeah. Right.
Where a guy has to go damn near the length of the field to score a goal.
Right.
So we know he doesn't like it. I thought he was very diplomatic post game. And honestly, I'm glad he was, because as bad as it was, I think a little soothing is what was needed in that situation, but just remains to be seen.
I think the Americanized version of GM head coach is a little bit unnatural in soccer. What I mean by that is I grew up watching Arsene Wenger pick his players, pick all of his transfers and play them with one vision of what he wanted to do, how he wanted to do it. And maybe that's not as prevalent in soccer as I think it is, because I grew up an Arsenal fan, in elementary school in 06 when I picked the team, like watching Arsene Wenger and watching Arsenal and the way that they kind of went about things. But I feel like the GM role is different, right? Because Gary Smith is not the one making all of the moves for who he wants. If Gary Smith is spending $7 million, he's probably more likely to do it. He's probably more likely.
Paul Areola the other day.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's more likely to go get who's the best target for, like Przelko from Chicago that just went from Philadelphia to Chicago. Like he's more likely to get an MLS savvy, veteran, pragmatic, tracks back, big target forward guy. The best target forward in MLS, whoever that is. You can debate all day. Olivier Giroud. I was actually going to make an Olivier Giroud joke because that's one Arsenal Milan guy that we and Chelsea. Wow. Olivier Giroud the official player of the Nashville Soccer Show?
And to be clear, I think his level's still too high for MLS. I can see him going back to the Premier League next season. He's outrageous right now.
There's not another player that's played for all three clubs, right? That you could think of: Arsenal, Chelsea, and Milan. I can think of Milan and Chelsea, but not all three.
I can think of Milan and Chelsea, but not Arsenal as well.
Yeah, because you've got what? Clarence Seedorf? Did he play for Chelsey?
Yes, for a minute.
Andrei Shevchenko.
Yeah, that's the legendary one.
He was terrible at Chelsea.
He was really bad. He was like one of the worst transfers in Premier League history.
Pato.
Another terrible one at Chelsea. Yeah.
He has made the transition.
Thiago Silva, like I could go on and on.
Which style of podcast did you enjoy more, Davey? The days when you were doing Daniel Sturridge to Nashville SC discussions, or the Ake Loba, why isn't he playing discussions?
We started the Daniel Sturridge to Nashville SC discussions. Yeah, we kicked that one off in earnest.
I kid you not. I mean, I was still in college at that point.
He has something to offer.
Oh gosh, here we go.
I don't even know who he plays for.
He is he plays for Perth Glory in the Australian League.
Oh, good.
Well, I think he had a 2-year ban in Europe for the whole gambling thing, right? So yeah,
he did.
That's right.
Him and Calvin Ridley could have gone to Atlanta together. That's a seamless transition back to MLS. All right, I want to wrap up the RSL stuff with this. 16 total shots. I thought that was good. A lot of opportunities. The right side of the attack. I've never seen a shift so much where a team is all on the left against Dallas and against Minnesota to then being all on the right side attacking. And the numbers specifically in the official stats, Nashville in this game, 50.8% of their possession was down the right-hand side of the field. That, I think, was a positive of the change of shape. I think the three in the back is here to stay because it gets the best out of Eric Miller and it gets the best out of your attack on the right-hand side. Lucas, I'll start with you on this one. I thought it was good. I thought Alex Muyl was actually really good in that role. I'm not sure he's ready to be an out-and-out fullback as a right back, but I think he was a pretty solid wing back.
Yeah,
he did step over himself off the ball, to be clear.
That's fair.
So let's not forget that. But go ahead.
It's clear this team is comfortable playing in that shape, right? With three in the back, it feels like there's a comfort level there. They had so much success with that last season, especially with CJ Sapong occupying role next to Hani Mukhtar. And like Davey alluded to, Dan Lovitz with his best performance of the season. I know that's a kind of a low bar, but markedly better performance from Lovitz returning to a wing back role, even though he just couldn't manage to score, just could not buy a goal. A lot of guys could not buy a goal at Real Salt Lake. Hani Mukhtar as well. I thought that was one of his maybe his liveliest performance of the season. So many chances generated. No coincidence that Nashville had a highest XG of the season, and Hani Mukhtar just somehow has not managed to find the back of the net. My prediction of him winning Golden Boot is not going swimmingly,
it's shambles.
But encouraging too to move to that shape and to see Sean Davis just plug right along. I'm comfortable saying that's the best acquisition Nashville SC has made since the start of last season.
No,
right? Like since they got up and off the ground in this MLS thing, Sean Davis is the best acquisition this team has made. So especially with Anibal Godoy and Dax McCarty kind of aging in those roles. So yeah, I mean, there's clearly a comfort level there. I wouldn't be surprised to see them deploy that against Columbus Crew here in a couple of weeks.
My question with that is, do we continue to see Miller at right center back, or does Jack Mayer come back in at some point? He had a dog outing just a few weeks ago.
Right.
And I'm sure that played into Gary's decision to trot Miller out just the other day. But I would expect to see Mayer back out there sometime soon.
Yeah.
I think they were just at a different level than they've been this season. Don't get me wrong. I think the back four is going to have its place against certain teams in certain places. We said it last week. Gary does have this small habit of waiting for the formation to go wrong before he kind of livens things up. Right. Which I don't really blame guys for trusting what they do. You know what I mean? I'm never really going to fault a guy for that.
Wait for it to be broke to fix it.
Yeah. Dance with the one who you brung you. You know what I mean? I get all of that. But at the same time, you kind of feel them creeping up. You know, you kind of think, hey, this is maybe one to get a new guy in the lineup or shift formation. And it always seems like he's willing to at least see things. And by then it's maybe too late. But I think they're comfortable with it. I think you get the best out of Wheel there. I still think that is probably the weakest aspect of the 11, whether it's right back or right wing back. I think it's the weakest part of the 11, other than center forward when Sapong's not in the lineup. So, I'm with you 100%.
And CJ Sapong also hasn't ever had consecutive double-digit goal seasons at MLS. Right.
I remember saying that early on. You're not going to get what you got from CJ Sapong again last year. He can be serviceable. He's probably going to produce at times. He's going to have some good games. But you're right. I don't think you expected to get that from him last season.
No.
Right? It was almost like a stop. It was like a stopgap. You brought in CJ Sapong, a good veteran kind of journeyman in MLS that could come in and hold that role while you went and addressed that need.
Yeah.
Well, they haven't addressed that need. That need is still very much at the forefront, and you can't count on CJ Sapong to replicate that performance this season.
CJ Sapong was last year's Teal Bunbury.
Yeah,
literally.
That's fair.
I mean, he was brought in to push. Yeah, he was brought in to push Yonder Cadiz. Yeah. It's interesting. All right, we got to talk about the red card before we get to U.S. Mexico. I mean, there's not really much we can say other than it was really bad. It was a red card, and Dax Picardi's not going to play for a couple weeks. Is that basically all we need to say?
Yeah, I know he put a statement out, which good for him for owning it. It's just a red card. It just is what it is.
It's weird.
Yeah,
it was a weird moment for him.
Very weird. I know his wife
has been posting some
stuff that like they've been under a lot of home stress. I think there's like a person she posted a video the other day of a person casing their house.
That was crazy.
That's
so some true crime stuff going on. Over there.
Yes, again, not to like absolve the guy.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Anyone who's ever met me knows I'm a complete nut. And so if something like that's going on around my house, I can't imagine how I'd act in a game where someone pisses me off laying on top of a ball. So, I don't know. I also fouled out of every basketball game I ever played in. So I'm maybe not the one to offer advice on this.
I was that guy as well. And the one taking charges and then yelling when I charged someone on the other side and fouling out as well. So YMCA basketball, I was the meta world piece of YMCA basketball. Yeah.
Love it.
Lucas, you got anything else here?
Yeah. Before we move on here, I do want to just sort of address this. I don't want to call it excuse. A lot of people are using it as an excuse of being on the road for these 8 matches.
Yes.
Kind of contextualizing poor performances. And that's not to call this a poor team performance. There were certainly poor individual performances and bad moments, But as a whole, we've agreed that this is a good enough performance to win. Just the weaknesses ultimately overpowered the performance and led to a loss. But we can look at Dallas. I mean, and we're going to have a few more of these as we finish out the back half of this 8-game road trip to open up the season. But people jumping to this, I just want to kind of address it, right? Because it's very real. Like in MLS, more than any other league probably in the world, there's a very real issue of being on the road and the difficulty that poses. But I do want to say I'm tired of hearing about it. And I'm curious how you guys, what you guys kind of think about it, and trying to find that balance of not being too far on one end of excusing everything that you see as they're on the road, just got to get X amount of points, or being totally on the other that, no, they all count the same. They all have to have the same performances.
You want it first, Will?
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm just curious to get y'all's take. I do understand how tough that is to do. And I will say before y'all do that, the team we saw in Dallas, to me, looked like a team that had gone from Seattle to Minnesota to Dallas in a quick span. It's a lot of miles. But I can't sit here and let people tell me that the set piece defending issues are going to go away because they're playing in Geodis Park and not in Rio Tinto Stadium, which, by the way, is a hilariously named venue for a team located in Utah. You're going to tell me Gary Smith will view Ake Loba more favorably because they're in Nashville and not Dallas or Salt Lake. So I'm just curious to get y'all's take on that before we do move on.
So for me, I don't think that a team that has 58% of the ball is suffering from exhaustion from traveling. Like, I don't think a team that is traveling a lot is switching off on set pieces because they're traveling a lot. Those are technical issues, not finishing chances in the box. You know, a ball goes off the post. Like, Zach McMath makes 7 saves. Like, that has nothing to do with travel for me. And yes, you put all things together. Maybe if they're a little bit fresher, like they're more in the game mentally, but then we're talking in things that we just we don't know. Like we know the effect that flying and being on the road has in MLS in possession and how much teams have on the ball when they're at home and on the road. I also think there's an argument to be made that without a second-minute goal, Nashville doesn't have 58% possession in this game. They were kind of forced into taking the game by the scruff of the neck and actually going all out for attacking because they had no choice. They were down.
I couldn't believe how open and this game was.
It was unbelievable.
For what we've seen with this team in Utah last year, that was the most boring game I'd ever watched.
Right.
Scoreless draw.
I know that Gary Smith is not comfortable playing open games. Yeah. He doesn't like 3-2 wins over Orlando. He would rather win 1-0 like he did at Seattle every single time. You know, the game against Cincinnati a season ago where they give up the 2 penalties and Joe Willis flips off Brenner as he catches the ball in his hands easily, which is still the most incredible moment Joe Willis has had, other than obviously the inaugural game, but that goes without saying. It's just not the way Gary Smith wants to play. So this to me was a really weird game because Nashville was so attacking. They were on the ball so much. And that to me kind of negates the distance thing for this game. To be fair though, FC Dallas is playing really well. I mean, They just killed Portland Timbers. I mean, you've got a New England side that goes to Charlotte and loses to Charlotte FC. I think there's more of a discussion to be made that the CCL fixtures are the hardest thing for a team to go off of. And then you talk about the road trips because we've seen that now with Seattle. Montreal is off to a dreadful start after their CCL fixtures at the very beginning. So, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I don't think it was an issue in this game because a team that is exhausted doesn't have 58% of the ball on the road against a really good team in Salt Lake.
Yeah, I tweeted that after the game. It just missed me with all of that. I don't need to hear about travel. Not 4 games into the road trip. Maybe games 7 and 8. I'll be willing to hear it. Not through 4 games. Doesn't interest me one bit. And I can't confirm this. I think the team had the option to play a few home games at Nissan Stadium before the stadium was finished and chose not to. So someone up there made that decision. You got to deal with it. I don't give a shit. Doesn't interest me one bit.
I love it. The one thing I will say, though, that I don't think is talked about, and we'll move on to USA Mexico, I do think it's going to be harder than people think those first couple games back at home, because this team is kind of trying to tread water right now on the road. And then they've got to then be the aggressor, and they're going to have the pressure of playing in front of this huge crowd, which isn't a bad thing, but I think there's a certain amount of pressure of getting started on the right foot because you've had to start behind the 8 ball. I just think the mental aspect of like, hey, look, these are the games that we're supposed to win because we weren't supposed to win the first ones. Like it's making everything harder on yourself. So I think that's going to be interesting to kind of see how they cope with that. All right. So can U.S. Soccer tomorrow in Mexico City get Gary Smith on loan? Because if there is ever a game to try to grind out 0-0, this is the game for the U.S. men's national team. No Weston McKennie, no Serginho Dest, no Brendan Aronson, no Matt Turner, no Chris Richards. Gio Reyna is back in the squad, but he surely will not start because he's missed the entire club season with a hamstring injury. How low do our expectations need to be? How scared should we be? Lucas, I'll start with you on this one.
I'm terrified.
Mexico.
Yeah. We said before the mom picked me up, I'm scared. That's me right now. Because you're right here on the okay. 3 games left in qualifying. As USA sits in second, tied on points with Mexico, who is in third. USA 4 points back of Canada, 21 points to Canada's 25. With 3 games remaining, Mexico, Panama, and Costa Rica. I mean, what are we on the 15-yard line? Is that 10-yard line? Is it first and goal?
Probably the 10. Probably first and goal.
First and goal. So I'm scared. I mean, first and goal, maybe with the Butch Jones offense, right? Is how I'm feeling right now. That's how I'm feeling right now. You know, you address the guys missing. Who starts at right back? Who fills Weston McKennie's role? The number 9, you know, Pepe out of form right now. Jordan Pefok in excellent form. Do you trust him in there right now? How fit is Gio Reyna? You know, how much time are you willing to give him off the bench? Greg Berhalter has already said he's using all 5 subs against Mexico. Okay, fine. Kellen Acosta saying that the team had been sleeping in altitude tents to prepare for the altitude in Mexico. A lot of moving parts here. There's just a lot of moving parts, and I'm afraid. You know, I don't have any in-depth analysis. That I'm just saying I am encouraged that John Brooks is not in the team. Something that probably should have happened a while ago, and that this is Walker Zimmerman's back line to command, and deservedly so. But just overall, I don't know that I trust the coach with the best win percentage in U.S. men's national team history, and Greg Berhalter, to handle this properly over the next 3 games. Can either of you talk me down?
I can't.
I'm weirdly confident.
Oh no! What's happening with the world?
I think the guy just kind of owns El Tree. I don't know. I mean, when's the last time you felt like the manager had the best of that tete-a-tete?
Yeah, no, they step up against Mexico. That is one thing you have to give it to Berhalter, that against Mexico they step up.
So again, don't get me wrong, there are deficiencies in the squad. I'm not arguing that. And McKennie injury kills. I think the Aronson injury is worse than the McKennie injury in some ways. I think he's been maybe the best player of the cycle. Yep. McKennie is very, very important. We saw that firsthand here in Nashville, how important he is to this team. I assume it'll be Stefan in goal. Yes. He's healthy. Yeah. And then who do we think on the right? Cannon, or they brought Bello in last minute, right?
I think it's Reggie Cannon.
Yeah, that's what I figured. It's Cannon, and then Robinson on the left.
Yeah, I think you're seeing Miles Robinson and Walker in this game too,
and Anthony Robinson on the left though.
Yeah,
right. Okay, yeah, that's what I figured as well. So
don't rule out DeAndre Yedlin. You know,
I mean, if there was ever a game Greg was going to throw out a 3 in the back just out of nowhere, this would be the game he would do it too.
Remember last year, Gold Cup, we were so ready for like all 3 at the back, and then they didn't play it at all.
Locked and loaded. Yeah, it was like, this is what we'll see for sure.
Threw it away at halftime, and then they actually looked. That was the Ricardo Pepi game.
That's not to say I'm not saying I think they're going to go down there and just easily cruise to 3 points. That is not what I'm implying at all.
Well, they've never even done that, right? 3 points at the Azteca in qualifying.
Not in qualifying.
No, not in qualifying. Right. Yes. So I am confident in the team's ability to get a result there. I'm also confident in the team's ability to get the needed 4 points over the 3 games. So they need 4 points, 3 games, Mexico and Costa Rica away, Panama at home in the middle. So yeah, I don't know. Look, I'm not like a diehard. I root for the U.S. men's national team. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not the guy who's out there like, this is all I live in, like the Jonathan Slape, or a lot of people who we know and like very well. It's not my cup of tea. I like soccer and I like America, so I root for the U.S. men's national team. That being said, I maybe don't have the level of scar tissue that a lot of these people out there have. But to me, to see stuff on Twitter like Matt Doyle basically saying, start your worst 11 at the Azteca, it's like wild. Insane to me. It's crazy.
So wild.
Like, this team has been owned by the U.S. for roughly going on a year now. B, has been very, very poor at home over the course of this qualifying cycle. So other than, oh no, we've lost there a bunch, it doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, you got to break those things. Like sooner or later you do. If we are we think we should be the power in soccer in CONCACAF, what's at stake now isn't even that. It's, are you the third best team in CONCACAF? Maybe the worst Mexico team ever. Are you behind them with this golden generation? So I think you got to figure out a way to get a point and finish ahead of Mexico.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think you're going to see the most pragmatic lineup you possibly can. Your midfield three is probably Kellen Acosta, Tyler Adams, and Yunus Musa. This might not even be a Yunus Musa game because that dude could get battered by those Mexican players the way they play in Azteca. You might see Adams rolled on and Acosta in midfield. I think this is a Jordan Pefok game. I really do. I see Jordan Pefok with the U.S. not having a whole lot of the ball, just battering people at the top of that line and holding it up and trying to flick it on for Christian Pulisic. And definitely it's going to be Tim Weah on the right side without Aronson. I think that's your three. Jesus Ferreira has been really, really good recently for FC Dallas, playing as a false nine. This is not the game where you experiment with a Jesus Ferreira false nine, which makes me know that Greg Berhalter is going to start Jesus Ferreira as a false nine against Mexico, and I'm going to be livid. I'm going to be mad.
Yeah, just stick Pefok up there and lump the ball up to him, man.
Yeah, really. That's all it takes.
It doesn't feel like a Ricardo Pepi game, not from Berhalter's words, not from the matchup, from the road environment. But it's just so many question marks and rotation. The rotation that's going to be involved here over these next three games is what scares me with all the moving parts and all the unknowns. It's just a lot of uncertainty here. It's not going into the Azteca with this group to go get a win and then doing it against Panama. It's just a lot of rotation and question marks and moving parts, and I'm afraid.
I love it. All right. It's that time, gentlemen. It's the highlight of every show. It's time for the F1 Minute. Bahrain was pretty wild. McLaren, we're in the mud. Not a great start for us, but Ferrari is very back. Davey educating the good people of Twitter.com over the weekend that Ferrari is the New York Yankees. This is what they are. They're Manchester United because they've been mid-table now for far too long. They had a disastrous season 2 years ago, and now they're Man United. Let me go back to a young Will Bowling. This is circa 2006. My brother gets home from studying abroad and says, Will, soccer's great. We should cheer for teams. And I said, great. And he said, I'm going to be an Arsenal fan. Who are you going to cheer for? I don't think I've ever told you all this. And I said, I'm going to be a Manchester United fan. I'm going to cheer for them. So for about 6 months, I was a Manchester United fan until my brother sat me down one day and said, Will, you do realize you're cheering for the New York Yankees, right? And I said, what team do you cheer for again? He said, Arsenal. I said, I am now an Arsenal fan. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. Davey has effectively ended any affection that I had for Ferrari by telling me they're the New York Yankees because that's the team in sports that I hate the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Notre Dame comparison is really, really good because their fandom has this ability to kind of press their moral superiority onto you. And I think Yankees fans know they're scumbags. I think that's at the core. I think New Yorkers in general know that they're scumbags. So
we know a couple.
I appreciate. Yes, we do. I think it just comes with the territory. Like the Notre Dame fan, the Ferrari fan, they're trying to convert you to their religion. In Notre Dame's case, their actual religion. But with Ferrari, it's not actually religious. It's just their moral being, the fiber that they think exists, and you need to wear red and all this stuff. And
prancing horse.
It just grosses me out.
Lucas, your thoughts?
And the turn this weekend and the idea of oh my God, it's so beautiful to see 1-2. It's get that out of my face, man. It's so gross. How they were, but it was made up for me with Red Bull crashing out. So I think it all leveled out in the end. They're a good villain, so I appreciate them being back. The story is good. Just like I think football is better when Notre Dame is good. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. I just hate them still. And so don't be fooled out there.
It is so funny how the timing of, Drive to Survive and all the things that have made Formula One so big here in the U.S. have timed it out to where Ferrari's this lovable loser.
Yeah, right.
And it's and listen,
like they're the Cubs, right?
Yeah,
like that's what you think.
And
if
nothing
you
you
picked it
guys
up in the last 2 years, you think they're the Cubs.
Nothing
they're
you're
the
saying
Yankees.
Nothing you're saying is wrong. But look, my dad was so filled with glee over the weekend, and I was too, to see Ferrari back on top. But I was joking. I was hanging out with the guys from a Football and Other F Words podcast today, and we were joking about this at the end of the show, where it would be like if somebody said, you know what, I'm going to get all in on college football, and started watching college football in 2006. And then in year 2 of the Nick Saban era, 2009, Alabama wins the national championship. He's like, good for them, man. They needed one. Good for them. They've never gotten to experience that. It's just so nice to see them just see the light of success, and that's what it's like. But I was happy about it.
I do love Charles Leclerc, though. I'm not gonna lie. Leclerc is awesome. And I feel like my roommate explains it to me like this: F1 is more like golf, where you don't have to just have one favorite. You kind of they're just a couple of key characters you root against by the name of Lance Stroll, basically. And then everyone else is kind of like, oh, cool. Science One, or, Danny Rick. Everybody loves Danny Rick, stuff like that. And there's just a couple of Bryson DeChambeaus just lying out there in the grid. That being said, Red Bull's collapse was fantastic. And the fact that they made a car that could go 56 laps and not 57 was absolutely glorious. And it got Lewis Hamilton a podium, to which I said to my roommate, who is a big F1 fan, I said, wow, it's kind of crazy how Lewis just somehow worked his way on the podium. And his response was, yeah, get used to that.
Yeah, that's what he does. He figures out a way. And George Russell, pretty good performance the other day.
I love George Russell. I love George.
Driver, he'll be very, very good. I will say this about Ferrari. I love Mattia Binotto. I think he's hilarious on Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
Love the shades. I think he's got a great look, better looking guy than I think either of the other principals. So yeah, that being said, don't fall for the Ferrari love fest right now out there, unless you just liking the bad guy, which I dig. I support. I'm
not fan, that guy,
but I'm not saying you. I'm saying
no, right. That's what I'm saying.
Listen,
I could.
You go for it, but just don't think you're rooting for the Cubs. You're rooting for the Yankees. Just know that off the top.
It does set up a fun dynamic here with Ferrari taking 1 and 2, and then just Red Bull and Mercedes getting together. Okay, now what do we do? Where do we go from here?
Ferrari's the odds-on favorite to win the constructors now. Yeah. They're not going to, but they're the odds-on favorite. It's going to be Red Bull. I feel
I'd love to see Ferrari do well at Monza. I think that would be fun.
Yes, always.
I love how also on the way out here that I've effectively chosen the arsenal of F1 to like McLaren is Arsenal. I don't know what quote I'm thinking of. No, it's a never mind. It's a comedian quote that says everything we have in life is McDonald's. Everyone's just trying to market things like McDonald's. Every sports team I have is Arsenal. Tennessee Volunteers, great in the 90s, early 2000s, Arsenal. Atlanta Braves, great in the 90s, early 2000s, always find a way to blow it, Arsenal.
Not last year.
Not last year. That's for damn sure, baby.
Arsenal's playing good, not to go back to soccer, but they are very, very good right now.
I will say them beating Aston Villa was the most un-Arsenal result ever. Coming off a loss to a Big Six team, quick turnaround. You're still missing Takehiro Tomiyasu, who has been a revelation this year, and they won that game. Bukayo Saka is just incredible. That's it. That's the tweet. Bukayo Saka is just really good at soccer, so I enjoy him. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen? Anything we missed today?
No, I don't think so. No big Chelsea news yet. More next week. I think we'll know the short list next week, potential owners. So
Tom Ricketts, speaking of the Cubs, your boy.
No Ricketts. That's going on Twitter. So
Cubs fans don't want Tom Ricketts to own the Cubs.
Nobody does.
It's
big international break coming up here.
Huge. And we'll be back at it again next week. A welcomed time for the international break for Nashville SC. But gentlemen, something we did not say. We are halfway through the road trip to start the season. Days at Geodis Park, that much closer. As always, we are your Nashville Soccer Show of record. It is the Nashville Soccer Show. Subscribe, rate us, and we'll talk to you next week on 104.5 The Zone.